Afternoon Blues, and welcome to the Royal Blue podcast. It's Tuesday, it's day 2 of streaming live every day this week on the Echoes Royal Blue YouTube channel and the Echoes Everton FC Facebook page. I'm your host Ian Croll, and for today's show I'm joined by the Echoes Everton FC correspondent, home and away, Joe Thomas. Joe, how are things?
Yeah, all good, cheers, thanks Ian.
Good. I'm also joined by the Echo sports reporter, Connor O'Neill. Connor, how are things?
Very good, thank you Ian, very good.
Good. Well, if you're watching us live on YouTube and Facebook, you might be wondering why the lads are looking a slightly worse for wear today. It is because it was the sports Christmas night out last night. So I did come in this morning and Connor was an absolute state. Joe looks in good spirits, but Connor, I am a little bit worried that we're not going to be able to get you through this hour.
I think I should survive. I think the reason why Joe looked better than me is because he went home a lot earlier than I did. So a lesson to be learned for people out there: go home early.
Well, that's it, isn't it? But as you can see, the guys are nothing but professionals and they are here regardless of how they're feeling. So, yeah, plenty to get through. Today, we have got roughly an hour. Today's agenda, I'll just go through it very quickly before we move on to Joe and the final word on Forest. So, yeah, today's agenda, we are going to have the final word on Forest. Fantastic win at the City Ground. We're going to have an injury update on Calvert-Lewin, Onana and Andrew Gomes. We're going to look at Anthony Gordon set for a return to Goodison Park. Newcastle's injury woes, recently hit with the blow of their goalkeeper. We've got some transfer speculation, which Connor will go into. We've got the latest on Sheffield United manager Paul Heckingbottom and his future. The new TV deal that was announced yesterday, and of course, just a little word on Everton's points deduction and the appeal process and what is going to happen with that over the next couple of weeks. So, plenty to get through. Let's not forget either that for those watching live, please submit your questions, so I can ask the guys anything that you feel free to ask. But Joe, yesterday we went live at 12 p.m. We went into the Forest game and it was a really good conversation. But it's only fitting really that you were there at the City Grounds and that you should kind of have the final word. Just going to read a tweet that you put out following the game. It's open quotes: Everton's fight back is officially underway. This wasn't an easy win, but it was a deserved one. Everton were better on the pitch and in the stands. Just give us your, thoughts on the game and, the atmosphere overall.
Yeah, that was an overview of my thoughts leaving and also a way into what was essentially my match report. And still, a couple of days later, agree with everything that I said there. It wasn't a particularly, I'm sure you will have covered this yesterday, it wasn't a particularly good game, wasn't a classic. It was a bit of a stodgy stalemate for large periods, but I did think that Everton were the better side. I thought they had more authority, more control, more organisation. You looked, it was clear what they were trying to do. I thought they were very effective at stopping Forest in key areas. Elanga caused Ashley Young a few issues, but for the most part, it was actually Everton that created the better chances. Could easily have been 2-0 up going to half-time. Betto should have scored. McNeil couldn't have done much more, I don't think. It was just a good block on the line. He beat the keeper. And Everton had a few other promising attacks in that first half, and obviously they got the goal in the second half. And when I was speaking to Sean Dyche after the game, one of the things I said to him was, and he agreed that he was pleased with us. This aspect was obviously after they got the goal. It wasn't like it was all backs against the wall for the last 25 minutes. Forest did have little bits of pressure, but they had no real controlled pressure on Everton. It wasn't, Everton defending their 6-yard box for half an hour and lucky to get away with it. Didn't see it in real time, to be perfectly honest. Speaking to Steve Cooper after the game, he was mentioning the penalty shout on Decore. Everton might have got away with one a little bit there, but I think that, to be perfectly honest, due a few. So we'll take that. But no, Everton they were better on the pitch, and I said better in the stands. I know my colleague Chris obviously wrote about this as well. Some of the songs the Forest fans were singing were particularly unsavoury and just completely unnecessary, and there was just no need for it. And in stark contrast, I was looking at that away following, and it looked like an absolute party in there. It really did look like, and I mean, even at 0-0, even at the start of the game with the protests against the deduction and handling of that case during the game. And I made a big point of this during the game and in my match report as well. It was really notable that as the game was kind of heading towards that stalemate around the hour mark, it was the away fans that broke the silence. It was Spirit of the Blues that was ringing out. Don't know if people got this on their TV or on the radio when they were listening and watching the game, but it was the Everton fans, those near 3,000, that just kind of provided a little bit of a boost. It just galvanised the players, and it was in the minutes following that they got the goal. And I know that's all romantic, and people will say, "Oh, you're attributing too much to the fans" or whatever. But I think that we've seen so often with Everton and this fan base that they really are a 12th man when they get involved, and they get involved very often.
Yeah, and former Everton player Michael Ball was in the away stand, and he spoke very highly of the travelling fans and heaped massive praise on Dyche. So he's obviously been at the forefront of everything and in the mix of things as well. Must have been fantastic to be in that away end.
Yeah, I'm sure it would have been. Say it looked like my feet were freezing in the press seats, but they were dancing up and down in the stands from over there. I don't think anyone would have been that cold. But no, Dyche was very happy afterwards as well. He's someone that doesn't let his emotions get the better of him. Other than perhaps in the dugout, you see him quite animated in the dugout, but you very rarely see him animated in interviews or in press conferences pre-match or post-match. But I think you could kind of tell that it was a big win for. It felt a big win for Everton, for us, and for fans and for the players. Just as I say, the fight back started to get that first win on the board, especially with the games coming up. First win after the deduction, start clawing those points back was very, very important. And I think that Dyche had a sense of that as well. And when I asked him about that, he basically acknowledged it as well, that for all that he tries to say about protecting the players and keeping Finch Farm away from the noise of what's going on in the wider footballing world and keeping it just on that group of players, I think there was a clear awareness on Saturday evening that would have been a real morale boost and probably one that was necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And Connor, you obviously watched it yourself. Very happy on Saturday. Any standout performances from you?
Yeah, I thought James Garner was absolutely superb. And I think he showed on Saturday why so many Nottingham Forest fans rate him so highly and rave about him the way they do after his loan spell there. I thought he was absolutely superb. It was one of his best performances I think we've seen in an Everton shirt from Garner. I thought he was everywhere. He was creative. He done the good side of the game, what we know he can do in terms of the nice touches and keeping the possession. But I think he also done the ugly side of the game really well in terms the getting stuck in, because obviously it was a tough physical game at times, and I thought he was just absolutely superb from start to finish. And it was a good team performance, wasn't it? You think Jordan Pickford didn't have a lot to do, but then he makes two crucial saves towards the end. They defended quite well, but I just thought Garner was head and shoulders above everyone else on Saturday, and was easily, comfortably man of the match.
I mean, he said that himself, didn't he? I think he spoke to Everton TV, and he said the Forest game was his best performance to date. What's he got to do then to push on and improve and make that position? He's already made that position anyway, but to make that position and cement it further.
I think it's just consistency, isn't it? I think that's the biggest thing in football for anyone really. It's consistency. It's being that level every week, or more times than not. I think Everton, we've seen in recent times of kind of being victim of not consistently performing to the levels that we know they can perform at, both as a team and individually. So I think that the challenge now for James Garner is to keep playing at that level every week on week, and kind of build a bit of a solid foundation and take it from there, because there's no reason why he can't become an Everton midfielder for years and years to come. He's a young lad, got a lot really bright future ahead of him, and now it's just about him consistently producing them level of performance on a weekly basis.
I think the most important thing for Garner and his development now over the coming months is probably less about what he can do and more about Dwight McNeil and Jack Harrison staying fit, because Garner has made that centre midfield spot his own now. He's one of the first names on the team sheet, and he said over the summer and beginning of this season that he would be happy to play wherever he would get a game. But he was also very clear that he sees centre midfield as his best spot. And in fairness to Dyche has always acknowledged that, even as he's moved them around. But we saw at the back end of last season, it was at Crystal Palace when he got his first start in central midfield in the away game at Selhurst Park. and that was the start of his first proper run of fixtures for Everton. But what we saw towards the end of the season was he got pulled out all over the place, pulled out wide, both in terms of wide midfield and at fullback. And I think what we have to remember going into this busy run of fixtures is this is still quite a small squad. Now, against Bournemouth last game of last season, he ended up playing essentially right wing back, and that shouldn't end up being a situation that develops anytime soon around here, because obviously you've got Ashley Young playing there, Nathan Patterson's fit, and Seamus Coleman looks essentially back and available. So you've got 3 options there, but Everton still don't have many players out wide. If one of those starting wingers was to get in, you've got Onana and Andrew as well, but I'm not entirely sure how much Dyche trusts Andrew, especially when he wants his wide players to also play a defensive role. So I actually think that the only thing that's likely to disrupt James Garner at the moment from what he's doing in the middle of the pitch would be if, say, Jack Harrison got injured on the right and he was left trying to work out where's my square pegs round hole, and Amadou Onana gets fit. He's got 3 centre midfielders there that he can put in. He might go that Garner's the best option on the right, and that would disrupt his progress in his best position. I think that's the only thing. Obviously, that's something outside James Garner's control. Hopefully, it doesn't happen because he's excelling there.
Well, it was another promising performance from Garner, and it was a special win. But we won't dwell on it too long because there's so much more to come this week and in the coming weeks. So we will move on. And Joe, I will come back to you. Calvert-Lewin, Onana injury update. Obviously, Betto came in for Calvert-Lewin. Onana's been out for 1 or 2 weeks now. So what is the latest on both of those players?
Yeah, well, I spoke to Sean Dyche after the game, and he was hopeful of Dominic Calvert-Lewin being available this week. Since then, Calvert-Lewin's been training. He's had a calf issue, which has been the issue, which has been the problem. I think it was only ever seen as a minor setback. And yesterday, the club released pictures of him in the gym, not on the grass, admittedly, but he was skipping. I mean, if you're struggling with your calf, you ain't skipping, I don't think. So I think the signs there look pretty positive. Hopefully back for Newcastle, but certainly if not, then I think he'll be in and around the mix for Chelsea. Amadou Onana is a little bit further away. I think that we might not see him this week. It might be the week after. Hopefully, that calf issue that he's got's kind of just persisted for a little bit of time. So I think we'll see Dominic Calvert-Lewin back before we see Amadou Onana. He'll be back in and around the matchday squad. Obviously, if he's fully fit, I think we will probably start him. But I know Betto missed a big opportunity, and there were probably moments the other day when he looked a little bit clumsy and a little bit rusty. But I actually thought he did a reasonably decent job, and I think he showcased that I thought he showcased that what he brings to this Everton squad is that what he brings to Everton squad is that he can. It means either Dominic Calvert-Lewin's there, they can still play with the setup that Dyche wants. There is only really a plan A. For Everton at the minute. The problem for the last 2 years is that plan A completely falls apart when you haven't got a target man or a focal point like Calvert-Lewin. Betto is a similar player. He might take, he's still adjusting to life in the Premier League, but hopefully, he'll carry on being effective. And albeit he didn't take his chances the other day, he still helped the rest of the Everton players play to the setup that they're most effective in, and that's crucial.
Connor, obviously Joe's talking about Betto there. Well documented how he played on Saturday. Do you have confidence in Betto to continue to lead the line if Dominic Calvert-Lewin is ruled out again on Thursday?
Yeah, I think you've got to, haven't you? I think it's been tough for him, hasn't it? Because obviously you come into the Premier League, it's a big jump from Serie A from where he was. There's probably been a lot of pressure on him. He's going to come in and score goals. Obviously, he's done well in his first game off the bench against Doncaster. Then obviously Calvert-Lewin comes back into the fold, does really, really well, and kind of positions himself as the undisputed number 9 for the Blues. And there's not really a competition between him and Betto. Obviously, Betto's been forced to then wait on the sidelines and watch on. Game time here and there, a bit limited. And obviously, you're only thrown straight back into the deep end on Saturday because obviously, Forest away with no Calvert-Lewin. All of a sudden, it looks, that little bit more daunting for the lad. And I think there's elements to his game that he needs to improve, but I think he's admitted that himself. Some of his hold-up playing, his touches and stuff are a little bit kind of not where they should be. I think there's certainly room for improvement there, but I think you can't knock his work rate, his energy, and his willingness to hold the ball and do the hard yards. And I think as long as he does that, Evertonians will be endeared to him, and it's just the rest will hopefully click into place. But I think you've got to feel from Alex it's tough because you come into a foreign country, it's a massive step up from where he was. There's a bit of an expectation on him, and then obviously you find yourself kind of frozen out a little bit because Dominic Calvert-Lewin comes back into the fold, does really, really well, and Everton have got their number 9 back, and he's forced to watch from the sideline. So I think that the lack of game time won't have helped, and I think we saw elements of that on Saturday, that he's not had much game time in recent months. But yeah, I've got every confidence that he'll continue to adapt and improve, and he'll be a real asset for Everton moving forward.
And Joe, one player who we didn't expect to return to an Everton shirt, Andrew Gomes, played over 60 minutes for the under-21s last night. What is the situation with him? He's obviously featured in some sort of match play. Do we expect him to play a part in the coming weeks? I suppose injuries will play a part, and he might get a game.
Yeah, well, I think it's a tentative first step back into competitive football for him. This is a player that hasn't played any minutes since pre-season. Dyche wanted to have a look at him after he came back from France, and Gomes was in and around the squad, getting minutes out in Switzerland, and then I think it was Bolton. I can't remember now, but it was one of those games that he started. He was on the bench for the Fulham game, the first game of the season, so he was obviously fit at the start of the campaign, but he hasn't featured since for the senior side, and that's basically because of his injuries. It's been a weird one with Gomes, because it hasn't been one particularly bad issue. It's just been lots of little minor setbacks that have just kind of just kept combining to keep him out. And I know that Dyche has been frustrated, not with Gomes, just frustrated with the bad luck that he's having, and had a lot of sympathy, because I've spoken to Dyche about Gomes quite a lot over recent months. And for Dyche is always keen to stress that he thinks that there is a talent in there, that he thinks there is a really a player with some real quality, and he's also keen to, for understandable reasons, to get those players who've been the longer term absences back fit, so that he's got a more competitive squad. Because I think that at best at the minute, obviously Everton play 3 in midfield, and they have 4 central midfielders, and for most of the season it's actually only been 3 that have been available because of injuries and suspensions, and that will feature again soon, I should imagine, with Doucouré being on 4 yellows, and obviously is the case now with Amadou Onana still out and probably not expected to be involved this week. So he made 60 minutes for the under-21s last night, played well. Paul Tate was pleased with his ability that he displayed, also pleased with his attitude. Didn't go in for a shower when he got subbed off. Stayed on the sidelines and cheered on the young teammates. I'd suggest it's still probably some way from him being considered for first team football. That's not to say that he might not make it onto the bench, but Seamus Coleman played 3. I think he started 3 under-21s games before he made the bench for Manchester United, and then obviously he was on the bench on Forest as well. So that's probably around the benchmark, really. I think we might see Gomes in and around either the under-21s or on the bench of the senior squad over the coming weeks, but it'd probably be Christmas time at best. Maybe there's a chance, I suppose, the Fulham in the Carabao Cup game, depending on where Dyche sees his priorities are, that he might use that as an opportunity to try and give genuine first team minutes to some of the players that haven't had that for some time and are just recovering from injury. So that might be the one to watch out for. So not imminent, but obviously taking a very big step forward, and that is a huge positive.
Connor, before we came on here, you described Andrew Gomes as the least Sean Dyche player ever. Is that something that you stick by, or do you kind of think that he'll get a game in the coming weeks?
Well, there's no secrets being kept today, is there? He outside our Christmas nights out like you want to Andrew Gomes thoughts. No, I think the way he wants to play Andrew Gomes, and the way we've seen him flourish in the past, certainly Marco Silva when he first joined, the way he wants to play, I'm just not sure that's cut out the way Sean Dyche sees Everton playing and gets the best out of Everton moving forward. And I also think as well the problem you've got is that the 3, once Onana is back fit, are so kind of settled, and you would be hard pushed to really drop James Garner, Amadou Onana, or Doucouré to put Gomes back in. You struggle to see where he would actually go in the team. But I do think, though, it's a welcome addition, because when you think of the games that are to come, and are going to come thick and fast over the, from you think of Thursday onwards, there's 6 games, I think, between then, from Thursday to Christmas, or from Thursday to New Year's Eve, day. Everton going to need a squad, because injuries and suspensions are probably going to come. and they need players who can come in and are used to the Premier League, and that's one thing that Andrew Gomes should be used to is the Premier League. It's quite interesting that he done really well at Lille last season on loan there. Paulo Fonseca, their manager, was really keen to keep him. They wanted to take him again either on loan or permanently this summer, but they couldn't broker a deal with Everton. I was actually at the game. It was Bolton, the friendly which he played at, and I was there with Joe, and I thought he sent the wrong message that night, Gomes, because he just looked well off the pace. He looked, he was trying to do things that he clearly couldn't do. And it was the wrong message to send to Sean Dyche. Since then, he's been in and out. Obviously, he's had injuries and stuff like that. But I think there's questions where he'll actually play a major role moving forward, I think this is a welcome addition for Everton, certainly just over the Christmas period, because it's just another squad player, and Everton are going to need every squad player they can get at the minute, because the games are going to come thick and fast, and naturally there's going to be injuries and suspensions.
Okay, so moving on then, Joe, with plenty of preview content coming with it, Newcastle and Chelsea ahead this week, but Newcastle have been handed an injury blow ahead of the Goodison trip, so it looks like they're going to be without Nick Pope following a shoulder injury. How much of a blow is that for Newcastle? There's always a bit of a, the national media certainly tried to create a bit of a narrative with regards to Nick Pope and Jordan Pickford, because they're rivals for that England #1 spot. But does that, heap more woe on Newcastle?
Well, the Newcastle fans are more than keen to pump out a narrative there as well whenever Jordan Pickford plays. It's always probably one of the more testing fixtures for him because of his Sunderland links. Obviously, it's a massive blow for Newcastle. You don't get much change from that defence. So a very, very good defensive unit, and Nick Pope's a massive, massive part of that. He's been a big part of their rise over the past 18 months. So losing that will clearly cause some issues. Obviously, Martin Dubravka been around the game for a long time, but it's that's a significant drop off, and it's probably one that Sean Dyche's Everton are very good at creating lots of chances and having lots of shots, including at home. Obviously, it's the conversion that's the problem, but I'm sure they'll be very, very keen to put him under as much pressure as possible on what will be a big game for him as he tries to lay down a marker to say that, look, I can do this job whilst Nick Pope's out, and don't go and sign David De Gea.
And Connor, can Everton capitalise on Newcastle's ever-growing injury rows? They obviously keep their top player, but they've got a whole host of players out injured, haven't they?
Yeah, they should be able to. I think we've seen some really, I know the results haven't necessarily been coming this season at Goodison, but we've seen some good performances. You think back to Wolves, Fulham, for the first 20 minutes, you could argue against Luton, I thought we were really good. Should have been 2 or 3-0 up. So there's no reason why Everton can't capitalise on Newcastle's injury crisis and kind of get one over on them. I think as well, let's face it, Everton know Newcastle won for the way they rocked up at Goodison last season and ran riot. Because I think that was the night when we all thought that Everton's Premier League status was going to come to an end in May. So they certainly owe Newcastle one, and they certainly can capitalise on their woes. But we've seen this before, haven't we, where sometimes when you've got injuries and suspensions and stuff like that, it can work the other way. And people, clubs and people rally around and, manage to get themselves over the line with a bit of hard work. And we've also seen it as well where backup goalkeepers feature against Everton after someone is out and game of their lives. So I think we should all be a little bit worried on Thursday like that. History doesn't repeat itself, but there's absolutely no reason why Everton can't beat Newcastle on Thursday night, that's for sure. I think they've got as good a chance as any, and when you think of the format and the form and type of performance that we've seen on Saturday, if they take that into Thursday night, then there's no reason why they can't pick up 3 points.
And Joe, Thursday will mark the return of Anthony Gordon. He's been speaking, a few comments and a few quotes from him, the last couple of days in the press, and he's kind of said, this game coming up is no different for me, just any other game, and he just wants to perform, win the game, and Newcastle are in a really good position. I mean, is he just trying to just be professional here, just trying to, cool things off with the Everton fans? He obviously has got an affiliation with it, but what have you made of Gordon's Newcastle career so far as well?
I mean, it's really taken off. It's been, he's doing a brilliant job there. I think he's got 6 Premier League goals there already this season. Scored the winner the other day against Manchester United as well. He's an increasingly important part of everything that Eddie Howe is trying to do there, and fair play to him, because he's only gone from strength to strength. He had a brilliant summer, player of the tournament at the under-21s Euros as well, and I think he's realising some of the talent that some people could see that he had when he was at Everton. He's a fantastically gifted player. He's got a very good attitude, I think. And obviously, I'm not saying that Everton saw the best of all of that at various times towards the end of his time at Everton, but obviously, we all have to remember that one, he was very young, and two, he played in a very difficult environment, both in terms of what's happening on the pitch with a team that was struggling and which became increasingly reliant on him, which was probably too much pressure at too young an age. And also what was going on off the pitch towards the end of his career as well, because, as was well documented at the time, and he's back in the headlines again, because of the points deduction. But, Everton was a club that was in, a bit of crisis come January, and, and had been for quite some time. So I think he's a very good player. Frank Lampard was a huge fan of him. And I think that, whatever people think of Frank Lampard as a manager, I think he can spot a young player and his talents. And I think that, he's realising that potential, and fair play to him. Probably was a good move for everybody. Everton got a good fee. It got him out of a position where, Everton was a very difficult club to be at the time, and he was under a huge amount of pressure to deliver immediately and try and be one of the saving faces of a squad that was struggling. Probably helped him to go to a place where he didn't have that reputation, that responsibility, that pressure, and just kind of almost develop under the radar for a little bit. And now he's starting to do that and starting to flourish.
Connor, according to the Times reports this week, Everton are set for a bit of an Anthony Gordon boost. The initial fee of around 40 million up front is expected to rise to 45 million. So that's according to the Times. Does that still feel or represent good business for Everton now that, as Joe's just mentioned, is he's he's in a rich vein of form. His career is kind of taken off at Newcastle.
Yeah, I think it was at the time, wasn't it? It was a deal that suited all parties. I think Everton kind of needed the money, the income that it brought. Gordon was obviously looking for a way out, so it was a deal that suited all parties. I think that the fee was probably about right, if I'm being honest, for where Anthony Gordon was at that point in his career. And it was a bit of an unknown in terms of whether he would go on to fulfil his potential. I mean, I'm with Joe. I've always been a big Anthony Gordon fan. I think he's a very, very good player. He's got a lot of good sides to a lot of good parts to his game. And I think it was just last season the way things panned out at a difficult time was unfortunate. I think he was ill-advised around a few issues and a few things that he'd done. But I think he's a really good player, and he's now showing the Premier League. He's a really good player, but. Yeah, I think that was about the right fee. I think if we can get 5 million more, then great stuff. And hats off to Kevin Felwell for putting that in the deal, because they're the type of clauses and deals that Everton have been long missing out on. Because, like we've seen with Liverpool and other clubs, they made a lot of money by adding on them clauses. So it's good to see Everton benefiting now and kind of following suit of Premier League rivals. But yeah, I think it was just a deal that made sense, wasn't it, for everyone? Everton got a good fee. The player who wanted to leave left, and that was that, really. And I think he's still missed by Everton, but I think what they got with him, no one can complain.
Okay, moving on then to some transfer speculation. Connor, you've been leading our live blog today. Transfer speculation on an potential Everton target, Calvin Phillips, being attracting some interest from Tottenham, and also Jake O'Brien from Lyon. Are you able to tell us a little bit more on those two players and the potential of them coming into Everton?
I think that the Calvin Phillips links, Everton are always on a long list of clubs, aren't they, who are linked to Calvin Phillips. I think half the Premier League is currently linked with Calvin Phillips and a few clubs from around Europe. It looks like he will leave. I think Pep Guardiola's been quite open in recent weeks that he will leave Manchester City in January. And I think he himself, Calvin Phillips, accepts that he's got to leave Man City in January if he is to make the England squad for next year's Euros and give himself the best possible chance of starting for Gareth Southgate's side. So I think that his exit from the Etihad is inevitable. Where he goes, I think, will remain to be seen, because the list is quite varied. I think you've got clubs like Everton, Tottenham. I think Liverpool have been linked in the past. The West Ham have been linked in the past. Newcastle has been used as possible, given Sandro Tonelli's current ban. So there's a lot of clubs, I think, who'll be in the hunt for Calvin Phillips' signature. I don't think, if we're being honest, my personal opinion, Everton will be the high on Phillips' list of destinations. I think if the likes of Newcastle and Tottenham are interested, given their current league positions and what they're going to be probably fighting for in the second half of the season, he'll be looking to push for a move to one of them clubs before Everton. But I think he's a player who Everton will continue to be linked with until he leaves the Etihad and signs for a new club.
And just on Olympic, Lyonnais defender Jake O'Brien, you've published that in the blog today. Just a little tidbit, on that. Is there anything in that one?
I mean, you don't know. I mean, it's a new name, I think, for starters. It's come from France, this report. He signed for Lyon from Crystal Palace in the summer, and he's impressed by all accounts so far this season for the Ligue 1 club, even though they're struggling domestically in their own league. I think this is the type of player that will see Everton to be linked with more. I think in terms of, perhaps a bit of an unknown quantity to some, but someone who Everton will probably seek as good value in terms of they'll probably get a good deal, bring them in, be able to develop them, nurture them the way they want to play, and it'll put them in a stronger financial position than if that player is to leave, because they'll be worth a lot more than what they bought him for. So I think at the minute, in terms of, there's no immediate kind of, he's definitely someone who Sean Dyche wants, so he's definitely a person who we're going to target in January. But I think this calibre of player, of someone young, someone perhaps under the radar, is the type of targets that we're going to see moving forward. So like we all know, Everton don't have the money to go big in transfer windows anymore, and they certainly don't have the clout to throw money at players to attract a big name. So I think this type of player stroke, profile is something that we'll see Everton into a lot more moving forward.
And Joe, just to backtrack slightly, just your thoughts on Phillips. Is he a player you'd like to see come into Everton?
I think the midfield is pretty settled at the moment. Obviously, more options and more competition wouldn't be a bad thing. But I think Calvin Phillips will probably have a lot of suitors, and I'm not entirely sure that Everton is perhaps where he'll want to necessarily go. Obviously, that depends on who's there after him. But if someone like a Spurs or a Newcastle was to come in, I would anticipate that's where he'd go. I think that Dyche, more than anything, prizes and values consistency. And, he's got obviously four midfielders, central midfielders competing for 3 spots there. One thing that Calvin Phillips is going to want is minutes, because he's going to want to try and get into the squad for the next England squad for the next Euros in the summer. So I think that the stars might not quite align on Calvin Phillips, although it is still early days. Everton are carrying out diligence on players at the moment. They are looking around. They are utilising their scouting networks as they always are, and they do have a good foothold in France. For players like what Connor was just alluding to there. So I mean, they will be active, but there's a lot of uncertainty around the club at the moment. Obviously, you have the takeover and where that may or may not be. You have the points deduction and the time and energy that is taking. You have obviously what's going on the pitch, and that's progress, but still with a small squad, and still we'll wait. We'll probably only know the full impact that this 10 points is going to have on the season probably towards the end of this month, when we see how well Everton adapts to trying to claw back more of those points. So, I don't think that January is going to be a lot of money, even if the takeover is approved. 777 are not a club that are not an organisation that at their other clubs have previously gone in and splashed the cash in transfer windows to try and get immediate improvements. Where they spend their money tends to be kind of on the backroom operations and trying to, not necessarily on the backroom operation, sorry, but on trying to fund the running of the clubs, because obviously they take over a lot of distressed assets. So it's trying to make sure all the bills are paid and things keep ticking over, and hope that helps to provide a firmer foundation for things to go right on the pitch. So, I don't think there's going to be a particularly active January transfer window at the moment. Sean Dyche doesn't know what his budget's going to be, so they'll be looking at targets. They'll be lining people up just in case they get a little bit of money and they get the green light to go after people. But I don't think that there's going to be mass change. I think everything that they can do, they'll do everything they can to try and line up all their eggs for the summer. Everything will be about trying to stay up as soon as possible, and then try and get a head start on the summer transfer window, because it's going to be a summer of real transition at Everton. A lot of players are out of contract that you would anticipate will probably leave. And the squad will be even smaller, because obviously those players will go, as will Onana and Andrew and Jack Harrison, the loan players. And there's a big opportunity there, I think, for Kevin Thelwell and Sean Dyche to reshape an Everton side and to finally get a squad which is less of a Frankenstein mishmash of different managers from throughout the Mashiri reign, and actually starts to put a bit more of a Dyche and Thelwell print on the squad. So I think that where they can, they'll try and gear up for a busier summer than January. Where that might change would be if things were to go badly on the pitch, and with the 10-point deduction, there to be a real danger to Everton in a proper relegation battle that's going to go towards the end of the season. Obviously, the next 5 games are tough, so we'll get a little bit of insight into that. But if it looks really, really difficult, then if there is any money, they might be more likely to gamble, because they might need any help that they can get. But I think the hope will be that they can have a relatively sensible January, an opportunistic January, where if someone like a Calvin Phillips, they get to midway through the month and he's still available, and the clubs in European football aren't biting, then maybe they could maybe go in and try and nab him, or probably a wide player would probably be the would probably be the main ambition, I think, if they could get anyone, just because after Harrison and McNeil, they don't really have anyone. We talked about James Garner earlier, potentially having to fill out wide if any of them was to get, either of those were to get injured. There's Arno Danjuma as well. But if you look ahead to the summer, Harrison and Danjuma going back, Everton would only be left with one winger at the club, and that would be Dwight McNeil, who is a very defensive winger, or tends to be used as quite a defensive winger. So goes back full circle to what we said about Anthony Gordon, and probably Everton still, there would be a role for him at the club if he was still there. But like again we covered earlier, I think that was a deal that suited every party. So I think that's probably where Everton would be looking at in January or ahead to the summer, those type of areas and that type of business.
Okay, so we are getting questions submitted, and there's 2 questions related to the points deduction topic, so I will come on to them. But Colin Jones and Mally Penn have submitted questions related to that, so that is a topic on the agenda. But I just want to come on to both of you guys. Joe, I'll come back to you first, then I'll come on to Connor. But reports following Sheffield United's obviously humiliating defeat to Burnley, that their manager Paul Heckingbottom will be sacked. Just your thoughts, really, because we wouldn't really consider them a rival if we had the 10 points back. We'd be further up the league, and we wouldn't even be probably considering a relegation battle as such. But what would be the better outcome for Everton in this situation? The manager currently staying, or we all know when a manager is sacked, they can get a new manager in, and a new manager bounce can help. So what's the best scenario for Everton in this situation?
Yeah, well, they're bringing Chris Wilder in, and he's obviously got experience in the Premier League with Sheffield United. And I think that there's a chance that he might make them stronger with the experience he has both of the league and of the club. And he had some quite innovative tactical setups as well, with the way he used some of his centre-backs to get into the Premier League in the first place. But ultimately, I don't think Sheffield United are going to be a club that are in Everton's orbit, even with the 10-point deduction. I think Everton will comfortably finish ahead of them. I think we got the truest understanding as to how perhaps Sheffield United were going to approach this season when they sold 2 of their best players going into the right into the beginning of the new season, so they get promoted, and Iliman and Ndoye goes and Sander Berge goes. Sander Berge obviously going to Burnley, who you would think they would have identified as somebody that if they had real intentions of staying up, they would have at least refused to assault one of their best players to a rival in that way. So I think that I think it's a bit of a strange decision. The easiest thing to do when things aren't going right on the football pitch is often to sack the manager. And really, it's probably a sign of Heckingbottom being guilty of his own, being a victim of his own success. The reality, Sheffield United didn't expect to get promoted to the Premier League. And rather than, 14, 15 games into the Premier League season, them still buzzing off the fact that he achieved something that wasn't really deemed possible last season, they're saying, we weren't expecting this, we weren't prepared for this, and we sold your 2 best players, but we're going to hold you accountable for us struggling in the league, which is just a bit mad, really, because you'd think that surely if their plan is to try and save as much money as possible, then go down and then try and come back up stronger than the manager that took them down when they were at a lower reb without all that money, it would probably be the best suited person to take them back up again. So it's an unimaginative move, I think. And it's probably one that just shows how unimaginative football can be sometimes. Like, I don't know what Heckingbottom else is supposed to do. And even for all saying that, obviously with the points deduction and with how bad the start to the season's been, in fairness, they are still within. And although this is probably more an indictment as to how weak the league is this season in comparison to recent ones, but he's leaving a Sheffield United side that's still very, very close, although it's bottom of the league, still very close to safety. So, it only take a couple of good results to get them out of there. So I think that it's a bit of a strange decision. I think Heckingbottom's a little bit unfortunate, but I think it shows the short-term thinking that we often see at Premier League football clubs or at football clubs in general at the moment in the modern world.
Connor, you go along with Joe on that? Is Heckingbottom, to feel hard done by Wilder coming in?
Yeah, I mean, Heckingbottom's gone, hasn't he? I think being what can be described as a far Hampshire type move. The prince who owns Sheffield United went on TalkSport this morning and told everyone that he sacked Paul Heckingbottom and was appointing Chris Wilder, despite nothing being official from the club. So it seems like there's some strange goings on in Sheffield at the minute. But I'm with Joe. I think the end felt near for Paul Heckingbottom, didn't it, on Saturday when the fans started singing Hecky out, and obviously when your team get beat 5-0 by one of your relegation rivals and you end up, with 10 men for the second half because your centre forward foolishly got 2 buttons. The end is probably quite near. But I'm with Joe. I don't really know what they wanted them to achieve. I think it was quite interesting as well on Saturday, wasn't it, after they got beat, where he said the football club made financial decisions, not football decisions during the summer. I think that was in regards to obviously selling Sander Berge to Burnley and a few of the things that they did where they quite didn't invest the money. But yeah, I'm with Joe. I think it's a very strange move. I don't really know what they want them to do. I don't know what they expect them to achieve. And I think, Chris Wilder going back there is an even stranger move because, people tend to forget, although we've done really well to get them into the Premier League in that first season, the second season they were pretty poor and he ended up being sacked and they got relegated. And since then he struggled up Middlesbrough, he struggled up Watford. So I don't really see how he's got the clout to come in and be the saviour-esque figure. I know he's a local man who is a Sheffield United fan, but it just all feels very strange to me. And I think you contrast that with someone like Luton, where you get the feeling that Rob Edwards, who took Luton up unexpectedly, in a similar way to Paul Heckingbottom, really, no matter what happens this season to Luton, you suspect that Rob Edwards will be leading them out next season, whether in the Championship or the Premier League, because why would they get rid of the man who brought them up so emphatically the way he did? So yeah, the whole Sheffield United thing is just a little bit baffling for me. I don't really A think what was Heckingbottom meant to do, and B, why they see Chris Wilder as the saviour like figure. They did, it's a real strange one. And I think the owner going on TalkSport and confirming a decision before anything was official from the club just sums up what's going on at Bramall Lane right now this minute.
Nice easy start for them then. Wednesday evening, is it Liverpool? I think, isn't it? Will you be supporting? Who would be going for there, Sheffield United or Liverpool, Connor?
You got to go Liverpool, haven't you? I mean, I know there's the new manager bounce and stuff, but it'd be a pretty heroic effort if Sheffield United were to beat Liverpool on Wednesday night from what we've seen so far this season, because they've been pretty dire for large parts, except for the game me and Joe were at Bramall Lane back in September when they picked up a point against the Blues. Well, and if it hadn't been for the heroics of Jordan Pickford, would have been picking up all 3 in the final minute. But yeah, I think Liverpool will comfortably dispatch Sheffield United with ease. I would be absolutely shocked if they were to get any new manager bounce and Liverpool was to be beaten at Bramall Lane.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the new Premier League TV deal that dropped yesterday, the news about that. Joe, I'll come to you first. I don't know if you know too much about it. I'm sure you do. But it's been described as a record deal with roughly around 6.75 billion. The latest set of UK broadcast rights. And there's actually one major broadcaster that has missed out this time for the years that are going to span from 2025 to 2026. So it's Amazon are out, but Sky and is it TNT now? They've kind of cornered the market. What should Everton stay as a Premier League team, which we fully expect them to do and hope that they do. What does this mean for the Blues?
Yeah, I think it's more stability rather than anything else. Obviously, it's a very, very big number that's been achieved for the sale of these rights. It's quite interesting because although it's a record deal in terms of that overall number, when you stretch out the amount of games it's going to be and the length of time, the 4 seasons, is actually quite a significant reduction per game, the value for each deal. So because they're getting more games, under this new deal, each game is effectively worth they're paying less for each game. So, but I think obviously the big thing is that it's just going to be there's going to be some more money coming into the clubs, and it means that let's be honest, the TV money that is the live support to a lot of top flight clubs will just continue. The drip will continue to feed. So it just makes the club it's probably quite interesting at this present moment in time, actually, because it just the longevity and the sign of that deal and the confirmation of the big sums that are still going to be coming to the clubs just makes Everton, like it does with anybody else who's in the Premier League, that little bit more attractive to a potential investor, because you have that guaranteed income. So long as you can stay in the Premier League, that those hundreds of millions of pounds are still going to keep coming and coming and coming. And that's when you see these overseas investors that come into the Premier League looking to take over clubs. Well, it's those riches that, so long as you can finish in the top 17 each season, they keep coming back. And then sporting performance beyond that, obviously, the better you do, the more money you get, and the more TV times you'll appear on TV. And if you get into European football, there's even more money, of course. But it's just that guaranteed income just adds stability for anybody who's managing the accounts of any of these football clubs. There are so many more games. I think that are going to be broadcast live. Like, it really does. Football is increasingly gearing up to the TV supporter, isn't it? And the global support. And that may be savvy financial things, but it, as probably as historical match going fans, it's, there isn't very much about the modern game that's being geared up to help supporters, even those supporters and the strength of the fan bases in the English Premier League and the English football pyramid is often seen as one of the things that makes it such a competitive and an attractive thing to competition to broadcast. So there's that weird contradiction where it's those who, with increased prices and VAR farces and stupid kickoff times, they're the ones that get messed. The most valuable asset gets messed around the most, doesn't it? So it's that's a bit unfortunate. I'm sure there's going to be some increasingly consistent and wacky kickoff times. I look forward to the football and weekends, being more often stretching from my Friday night through to my Monday evening, and 12 o'clock kickoffs on Saturdays and Sundays, and probably we've seen them creep in a little bit, 8 o'clocks on Saturdays and 7 o'clocks on Sundays. I think it was 7 or Everton Man United was last season. So, if you want to sit at home and just watch non-stop football, then brilliant. But obviously, you'll have to pay a big fee to the subscription services, and obviously there. But yeah, I've gone off on one there. Sorry, I'm a little bit, and I haven't got the numbers at the top of my head. But obviously, it's less per game, but it's another big chunk of money, another record deal for another 4 years. And what that does is, it increases the consistency and the stability of Premier League clubs' finances, so long as clubs can stay in there. It's money they can rely on. It's money they can build their futures around, so long as they can stay in the Premier League.
Joe, as long as you don't start talking about bringing the 39th game idea back, and games all over the world and in America and Australia, and they can do what they want. I'm not too fussed. But Connor, just a word from you. They've been described as record-breaking numbers, but Joe's kind of just got into it there a little bit and said it's actually less per game. So just brief thoughts on that.
Well, firstly, I think the 39-game idea would be welcomed by a joke because it'd be a nice little trip from away. They're doing Australia and America last year. Dust the passport off and a nice little jolly. I don't think that'll be too dismissed by a lot of journalists who cover football. But no, I think we all knew this was coming, didn't we? And I think the big thing for me from this, and Joe's touched on it there, is the kick-off times and the inconvenience that's going to cause, because while it's great that people get to watch football on television and stuff like that, there's only so many there's only so many time slots that they can put games on, so that means naturally more time slots are going to have to be brought into the fixture calendar, and that means that we're going to see more. I think 7 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock kickoffs on a Saturday and possibly on a Sunday as well, which I don't think is good news for fans, because if you're going to London and if your club's based in London, you're having to travel north for an 8 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday or a Sunday night, you've got no chance of getting back, because the trains are probably long finished by the time the game finishes and stuff like that. It's just a massive inconvenience. And these type of deals, they're great for the clubs, aren't they? They're great for the Premier League and the brand and stuff like that. But if we're being honest, they're just a nightmare for football fans, match-going football fans, because it's them who suffer. And before it, the inconvenience that it causes for people. And I think, unfortunately, as well, we're going to slowly but surely see the demise of Saturday 3 p.m. kickoffs in the Premier League, aren't we? Because we're only with the 3 new slots that are going to come in. That means there's 3 less games probably going to take place on a Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock. And I think that tradition is slowly dying from football. So while these numbers, I think, will be welcomed by the clubs, because it means, like Joe said, that the revenue that they bring in and how they can, bank on that money, which is really good. There is also the fact of that it just means that fans are going to get messed around once again and have to make long trips at weird times in the day or the night.
Okay, so we are coming to the hour mark now of this podcast, but before we do finish, we can't obviously talk about Everton without talking about the points deduction and the appeal. Joe, obviously we know Everton put the appeal papers in, the official appeal went in last week or over the weekend. Any updates?
No, wouldn't expect any for the time being either. The Premier League. Well, they'll now, Murray Rose and the KC that oversees thing will now appoint his panel of specialists, the independent commission to oversee the appeal of the previous independent commission. I wrote a lot at the weekend about how, for the process to really make sense, it needs to be completed before the end of this calendar year, because clubs need to know where they're going to be in January. This is a process that's supposed to encourage financial responsibility, and yet you could have situations where Everton might be, if Everton look like they're going to be in more of a relegation battle than they thought they might, then they might end up spending money that they feeling the need to spend money that they were hoping to save just to try and help get out of it. Similarly, the likes of Luton, and we touched on Sheffield United there. Clubs that look like they came up to try and save money and go back down and build back stronger, they might see that Everton -10 gives them a better chance than they ever thought they could have had to stay in the Premier League and spending some of that money as well. And what happens if they spend £30 million, finish 8 points clear of Everton, and halfway through April, all of a sudden Everton get 3 of the points back, and that's it's crazy. So no, I mean, nothing of any note since I haven't put the appeal in on Friday. Probably more the issue of greater interest is probably the salvos between Andy Burnham and the Premier League. Obviously, Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, but from Old Roan, I think, and he's an Everton season ticket holder. He sent his letter into the Premier League so his response to their response to his initial letter, complaining and raising concerns about the process. He did that at the weekend, and I think there's some salient points. I think the Premier League, they're not responding publicly, but I think they largely refute pretty much everything that he's saying. It'll be interesting to see where that conversation or that debate or that discussion ends up and where it finishes off. But I think even after the exchange of their initial letters, the two parties are still at very different ends of the spectrum as to where they stand. And obviously there are other things like the early day motion in Parliament and and various other plans to in formats over which Everton are going to carry on challenging. We saw the the placards being held up again at Forest. Turn the away end into a sea of pink at the start and on the 10th minute. And I think if you were to walk around Liverpool City Centre there, you'll see there's been a poster campaign that's been started as well, and we'll see more stuff against in the build up to Newcastle and Chelsea games, I'm sure.
Well, Joe, that brings us really interestingly onto the question submitted by Colin Jones. I'll put it up on the screen so you can see it, but it will also read it out. So Colin has said, do you think Andy Burnham's brilliant response to the FA will have a bearing on our appeal?
Probably not, because I think that they'll appoint independent specialists, experts in their fields who they will hope will be beyond prejudice. So they'll cancel out all outside noise. And when they come to making a decision and hearing the appeal, where I think that is probably interesting is I don't necessarily think that a new Premier League panel would go with Andy Burnham on the idea of there necessarily having been an abusive process here. But I would like to think that part of Everton's arguments would correlate with Andy Burnham's and might have some saying, and that is just how on earth has the Independent Commission, reached the decision that they get to 10 points, because they don't show their workings out. And when you look at anything else that you get sanctions for in the Premier League, it just seems incomparable. And to have, Everton getting punished, I think we all accept is wrongdoing's been done, and therefore they find it very difficult to compute how what they did, breach of spending by about £20 million over a 4-year period, is worse than administration, for which you only get 9 points. So I think that the pressure will be, and this is where the likes of Andy Burnham's work and others' work might have an impact, is on that kind of scrutiny over the process itself. You've got 41 pages of deliberations there. How can we dedicate none of them, or very, very little of them, to explaining how you got to 10 points? Where does that come from? What was the ideology? What was the framework? And is that going to be a framework, like Andy Burnham asks, that is going to lead to other clubs being treated and held accountable to the same criteria and the same framework, or is this a process just for Everton? So I think that wider noise may have an impact in terms of the strength of the calls and the scrutiny of how they reach the 10 points rather than anything. I think that's where it'll have the main impact, I think. But I don't think the Premier League are going to change their ways or climb down because of Andy Burnham's letters. But what it might do is it might add strength to the calls of the club and everyone else when this new independent commission sits to say, we really do need to go through how you reach 10 points, what that framework was, with a fine-tooth comb, because a lot of very reasonable and intelligent people are saying that it appears excessive. That might be the best angle to build the appeal around.
Okay, Connor, the fourth official has just put the injury time board up, but I will come to you on this one. Are you still feeling a little bit positive about the whole situation? I'll just put a question up from someone called Mally Penn. Submitted a question on the Royal Blue YouTube channel. Do you think we'll get any points back? But Connor, are you still feeling positive?
I think, to answer the question, I don't know. is the only answer you can give right now. I think it's a bit of a mystery, all this, isn't it? It's something that we've never seen before. It's something that we've never really had to deal with before. You would like to think that maybe they might get, maybe 4 or 5 points back on appeal that will be suspended, for a couple of years. But I think as things stand, we don't know, do we? It very much is a bit of a minefield, and who knows what is going to happen. I think in terms of the positivity, yeah, because I still think Everton will survive the season. Even if they don't get any points back, I think we've seen enough to suggest that they shouldn't be anywhere near the bottom 3 come April or May, and they should be well above nervously looking over their shoulder. So yeah, I think there's no reason why they should be fighting relegation, even with the 10-point deduction. In terms of will they get any points back, I just don't know. I think no one thought it was going to be 10 points, did it, that they'd be deducted in the first place. So as things stand, you can't call this, and you wouldn't even attempt to call it.
Okay, so we're going to leave it there. Guys, it's been really good today. But, Newcastle to come, and plenty that we've discussed, but plenty more content to come on the Newcastle and Chelsea game. But stick with us for the schedule this week. Live shows from 12 p.m. on the Royal Blue YouTube channel, and the Echoes Everton FC Facebook page. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe. And don't forget to check out the Echoes website and social channels for all the latest news and developments. Lads, thanks for your time today. It's been a really good chat, and I hope the hangover doesn't kick in too much later on this afternoon. Joe, I know you're all right, but I'm just more worried about Connor, to be honest. But lads,
yeah. I'll be fine.
Brilliant. Lads, thanks very much. I much appreciate
Cheers,
it.
thank you.
Cheers, thank you.